groups. We were taken aback by the concern for human rights coming from the Tories, but we welcome.
He's wasting time, Mr. Chairman.
So. Look, let me respond to the question that was written for the member on his behalf for him to read out. But I, in my opening, just mentioned just some of the examples of the progress we've made since 2016, reducing crime in the face of a rising population and in the face of government austerity. I mean, the ONS, which is nothing to do with us, themselves says, and the Commissioner referred to this in a different way, that you're less likely to be the victim of violence in London than the rest of England and Wales, less likely to be the victim of violence with injury in London than the rest of England and Wales. And we've just been talking about the progress made reducing the most serious crime there can be, which is homicides in London. There is a concern, though, which has been raised with me over the last few years, about high-volume crime.
Right. Imagine you're standing in a room that's literally on fire, and someone taps you on the shoulder and says, "Don't worry, the temperature's fine." That's essentially what's happening in London right now, and honestly, the audacity is almost impressive. Welcome back to British Mirror, where we dissect the political theatre that would make Shakespeare blush. Quick favour, if you're loving this sort of content, hit that subscribe button. Over 94% of our viewers haven't yet, and it genuinely takes a second. Absolutely means the world to us. Thanks. If you did, now back to the show. So, here's the absolute corker of a situation we're dealing with. Sadiq Khan, our beloved Mayor of London, has just declared that the capital is safe. Not safer, not incrementally safer, but safe, full stop. The kind of safe you'd use when describing a locked filing cabinet in a bank vault. Now, you might think that's great news, right? Wrong. Because Laila Cunningham, the Reform UK mayoral candidate, has come out swinging like she's playing political tennis and someone just served her a double fault right into her face. And frankly, the woman's got receipts. Actual, statistical, undeniable receipts. Let's break this down, because this isn't just about bickering politicians throwing insults around like confetti at a wedding. This is about how the public perception of safety is being carefully curated, massaged, and frankly manipulated to tell a very convenient story. It's the political equivalent of showing someone your best angle in a photograph whilst conveniently cropping out the chaos happening behind you. Khan and the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Mark Rowley, have been absolutely hammering one single statistic. Homicide rates are down. And yes, technically they're right. Homicides in London have decreased, which is genuinely positive news if you're measuring safety on an extremely narrow scale. But here's where it gets brilliantly ridiculous. Cunningham's pointing out that they've chosen homicides because, and this is the kicker, it's literally the only crime statistic that's gone in the right direction. Everything else? Absolutely dreadful. Rape is up, mugging is up, robbery is up, shoplifting is up, theft from a person is up, knife crime is up, drug crime is up. If you're keeping score at home, that's approximately 8 categories of crime that have gotten worse, and Khan's team is standing there like a magician saying, "Look at this one card I'm showing you, don't pay attention to the others." It's not just selective reporting, it's strategic gaslighting dressed up in statistics and press conferences. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or rather the entire herd of elephants. Khan's been making comparisons to Chicago and New York, arguing that London's safer because our homicide rates are lower. Brilliant strategy, except it's fundamentally flawed in ways that would make a first-year philosophy student wince. Cunningham absolutely destroys this argument by pointing out that 15 years ago, nobody would even have dreamed of comparing London's crime rates to Chicago. That right there is the real story. We've gone from being a city so safe we didn't even need to reference American cities for context, to being in the same conversation with places with endemic gun violence. That's not winning. That's a cautionary tale dressed up as good news. And here's where it gets even more brutal. Yes, homicide rates in Chicago and New York are higher, but you know why? Guns. Americans have guns, so when violence erupts, it's more likely to be fatal. That's not a feature, that's an unfortunate accident of demographics. But when you strip away the lethal weapons and look at knife crime, actual knife crime, the violence we're equipped to inflict on each other with British tools of the trade, London absolutely towers over New York. We've had a 60% increase in knife crime since Khan took office. 60%. That's not a statistical blip. That's a trajectory that should terrify anyone who cares about public safety. And then there's the rape statistics. A rape is reported every single hour in London. Every single hour. That's not an abstract number. That's a woman or a girl in genuine distress seeking help. So what happens next? Do they get justice? Do they get support? Do they see their attacker face consequences? Well, only about 6% end up in a charge. 6%, which means 94% of victims essentially disappear into a bureaucratic void where their trauma is statistically acknowledged but practically ignored. Khan looks women and girls in the eye and tells them London is the safest it's been. Cunningham's right to call it offensive. It's not just wrong, it's insulting to victims who've been systematically failed by a system that prioritizes statistics over substance. Now, let's talk about why crime is actually increasing, because Khan's been making some absolutely head-scratching decisions. Visible policing has become something of a myth in London. We're talking about a city of 9 million people and only 2 public counters that operate 24/7. 2. You could swing a cat in a decent nightclub and hit more police officers than exist in actual visible operation. It's not just a cutback, it's a complete redefinition of what public safety actually means. Then there's the stop and search issue, which is where Khan's policies become actively dangerous rather than just passively negligent. Stop and search has absolutely been slashed. And here's the thing, the data is clear-cut on this. When you remove stop and search, knife crime goes up. It's not complicated. It's not controversial among people who actually work in crime prevention. Stop and search allows officers to remove weapons before they're used. It's preventative in the literal sense of the word. You take away that tool, and suddenly you've got more knives on the streets being used in more crimes. This isn't coincidence, it's cause and effect. Cunningham also highlighted that Khan's removed police from the royal parks entirely, as of November. Royal parks, one of the few remaining spaces where Londoners should theoretically feel safe. And her local safer neighbourhood team dropped from 7 officers down to 1. 1. You can't provide community policing with 1 officer. You can barely provide a presence with 1 officer. It's like reducing an emergency department to 1 nurse and hoping nobody gets seriously ill. The mathematics of safety don't work that way. Here's the brutal reality that Khan's administration doesn't want to discuss. Create a power vacuum and someone will fill it. You remove police from the streets, you cut visible policing, you slash stop and search, and you know what you get? Criminals operating with less resistance, taking more risks, because the deterrent effect of police presence simply doesn't exist anymore. Cunningham's absolutely right that this is correlation and causation combined into one fairly obvious equation. But here's the thing that really gets under the skin. Khan and Mark Rowley are policing public perception rather than policing streets. That's the actual headline here. They've become masters of the media narrative. Homicides down? Brilliant. Let's talk about that exclusively. Rape statistics? Don't mention those. Knife crime? Absolutely avoid that unless someone corners you. Stop and search effectiveness? Definitely don't discuss the data. It's not governance, it's public relations. It's not management, it's manipulation. They're treating statistics like a menu where you can cherry-pick the items that look good and hope nobody notices you've removed everything that's rotting. Rowley's comments about targeting dangerous men and protecting women and children sound lovely in a press release. Truly they do. But where is this protection when a rape is reported every hour and only 6% result in charges? Where is this targeting of dangerous men when knife crime is up 60%?
These statements are politically astute theatre, but they're not backed up by results. They're aspirational statements made to sound like policy achievements. It's like saying you fixed the roof while the rain continues to pour through the ceiling. The real scandal here isn't that crime exists. Crime exists in every major city. The scandal is the willingness to misrepresent reality to avoid taking genuine responsibility. Khan's been the mayor of London for years now. These are his policies, his budget decisions, his priority choices. And when the results are disappointing across almost every meaningful metric, the response is to selectively highlight the one statistic that looks acceptable and hope everyone else stops asking questions. Cunningham's essentially calling out what should be obvious. You cannot declare a city safe when safety metrics are deteriorating across nearly every category. It's sophistry dressed up as governance. It's political gaslighting in its purest form. And what makes it particularly galling is that it affects real people. Londoners walking home at night, worried about knife crime. Women terrified to report assault because they know the statistical likelihood of seeing justice is roughly equivalent to winning the lottery. Shop owners dealing with increased robbery. Residents experiencing more theft. These aren't abstract numbers, they're lived experiences, and they're getting worse. The City of London deserves leadership that actually addresses crime rather than manages the narrative around crime. It deserves police presence that deters criminals rather than statistical footnotes that console politicians. It deserves honest conversations about what's working and what isn't, rather than press conferences celebrating the one metric that isn't actively catastrophic. Until that happens, declarations about safety are just words, and they're words that an increasing number of Londoners simply